Neil and Ramesh, you need to mute, please.
Chairman, the Councillor Buckland, he says he's trying to get in but struggling.
That's another one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, IT. So good evening and welcome to Rugby Borough Council's Planning Committee meeting today, Wednesday the 28th of April 2021. My name is Councillor Catherine Lawrence and I am the committee chairman. This meeting is being web streamed to the public and is being attended by members of the committee through Microsoft Teams. With me I have the support of the following officers: Stephanie Gibray, our Head of Growth and Investment, Richard Holt, our Head of Planning and Enforcement, Sarah Chapman, my legal advisor, Claire Wallachek and Veronica Beckover from Democratic Services, and the planning officers tonight are Joe Orton, Lisa Lee, Paul Varnish, Erica Buchanan and Nigel Reeves. Before we begin working through the agenda, I'll go through the rules on procedure. As set out in the introduction, this meeting is being web streamed to the public and is being monitored by IT services. If at any point there are any streaming issues, then I will be informed and the meeting will be adjourned until such time that the technological issues can be resolved. If during the course of the meeting any member of the committee is having connection issues, then there will be a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the connection issues can be resolved. If following the adjournment the connection issues cannot be resolved, then providing the meeting remains quorate, it will continue. It will be deemed that that member with connection issues has left the meeting and will no longer be able to participate. If my connection is lost, then the Vice Chairman will take over. For all officers and speakers, please switch off your microphones and cameras and I will call you to speak at the appropriate times. For committee members, your microphones and cameras should be switched off unless you are speaking, and if you wish to ask a question during debate, please use the raised hand function and wait for me to ask you to speak. The voting during virtual meetings will use the raised hand function. Are there any questions before we move on to the formal agenda? I will now ask our Democratic Services Officer to confirm the attendees at this meeting. Your name will be called and can you please confirm your attendance? Veronica.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Mrs. Brown?
Present.
Councillor Kieran Brown?
Present.
Councillor Batlin?
Councillor Butlin is having issues trying to connect but is still trying.
Councillor Cranham?
Present.
Councillor Eccleston? Councillor Mrs. Garcia?
Present.
Councillor Gillias?
Present.
Councillor Miss Lawrence?
Present.
Councillor Picker?
Present.
Councillor Roodhouse?
Present.
Councillor Sandison?
Present.
Councillor Srivastava?
Present.
Thank you.
Chair.
So we now move on to the full agenda, and agenda item number 1 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of March 2020. All those in agreement, will you please raise your hands?
May I please confirm with Councillor Mrs. Brown?
Yes, my verbal agreement, yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Can lower your hands, everybody. Agenda item 2 is to receive apologies for absence from the meeting. Do we have any apologies?
There are no apologies for tonight's meeting, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 3 are declarations of interest. To receive declarations of A, non-pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors, and I'll declare an interest in agenda item 2, application R20/0415 Rugby Town Football Club by virtue of being a ward councillor. Councillor Gillias? You're muted, councillor.
It's application R20/0415 0733 as a ward councillor, a parish councillor, but I must stress that although I am a parish councillor there, I do not give any opinion or vote on any planning application at parish council meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Garcia?
I'm glad Tony said that because I can't get my notes up on my iPad. So it's the same application. It's Lutterworth Road, Paleton. I think it's number 3 on the agenda. And because I'm a ward councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Picker?
Same as you, Chair, R20/0415 ward councillor.
And Councillor Cranham?
Thank you, Chair. R20/0635. The applicant is a close neighbour of mine, and I might find it a bit difficult to make an objective decision.
Okay.
Also, on the Kilsby Road side, a ward councillor.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations under A? Under B, pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. Councillor Cranham, your hand is still up. Is that an old hand? Thank you. There are none. And C, notice under section 106, the Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. No hands up. Thank you. We now move on to applications for consideration. Councillor Cranham.
Chair, I will not be taking part in the first application, obviously.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there's any cause for you to leave the meeting, though.
Okay.
Right.
Chair, it's legal here. Apologies.
Yes.
If Councillor Cranham is not taking part in the debate for this one because he was declared interest, then it would be best if he left the meeting, and I'll call him back in afterwards if that's okay, Councillor Cranham.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Right.
That's fine. I should clear off.
Right, Magpie Lodge Farmyard, R20/0635. Since the agenda was published, applicants had the opportunity to register to speak at tonight's meeting, and those registrations had to be made by noon on Monday. At that stage, no applications to speak had been received. However, since then, we have had some correspondence with the applicants of this particular application wishing to register to speak, but they were outside the deadline, and therefore they have requested that we defer this application until the May meeting. So I open it to the committee to decide what they would like to do with this application. We either hear it tonight or we defer it. Richard Holt.
Thank you, Chair. I also understand we have also received a late representation regarding a land ownership clarification and serving of a particular notice. So that is also another reason why it may be pertinent to defer until next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not sure whose hand was first up. Was it Councillor Gillies?
Yes, Chair, I will propose deferment.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for deferment?
I'll second deferment.
Thank you. Councillor Roodhouse, did you wish to speak, or were
I'll third it.
You'll third it. Right. All those in favour of deferring this application to May, please raise your hands now. How many is that, please?
That's 7 for, I will need a verbal vote.
Okay. Are there any against?
That's 2. Oh, apologies, Chair. The hands are keep coming down and up, so we can
Right,
take it again.
We had can we have hands up for deferment, please? I think there was 7. Okay. Have we got a number there, Veronica?
That's 5 for
Excuse me, Veronica,
yes.
can I vote for deferment, please?
That's 6-4, Chair.
Okay. Those against deferment, please show. And those abstaining, please show.
That's 3 for abstaining, Chair.
So that is a clear majority for deferment. Okay, lower your hands, everybody. Okay, in that case, we move on to agenda item 2, R20/0415, Rugby Town Football Club, Kilsby Lane, and Lisa Lee is to present. Lisa, I'll hand over to you. Sarah, did you wish to say something?
Yes, could you just let me invite Councillor Cranham back in? Thank you.
Yes. So while Lisa is loading up her screen, if we can get him back in, please. So Lisa, can you wait until Councillor Cranham is back with us? And Sarah will confirm that.
Chair, if I may, Councillor Batlin has just joined the meeting.
Good. Welcome, Councillor Butlin.
And Councillor Cranham.
Is Councillor Cranham back with?
Yeah, apologies for being late, but technology prevailed.
No, you're not the only one who's had problems tonight.
Hello.
Hi, right. Are we ready to go then? Okay, Lisa, it's over to you, please.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
So I'll begin. So this application is to use the existing car park at Rugby Borough Football Club for a car boot sale 14 times per year under a temporary consent for 2 years. The car boot will run on Sundays between the end of May and the beginning of September during out of football season. There will be 30 proposed stalls and pitches as indicated in the red outline on the plan. 83 car parking provisions provided for car boot visitors, and the sales will run between 9 AM to 1 PM with stall holders setting up at 8:30 and clearing away at 2:30, during which it will be marshalled at all time during the event between 8:30 and 2:30. Site photos. So car boot visitors will be parked opposite the pavilion, and also here's a photo showing where the car boot activity will occur. The next slide shows where the car boot sale will sit in relation to the neighbouring properties along Bucknell Crescent and Foresters Place, and also here it shows at the very end of the car park. So, key issues. In terms of principle of development, it will be located in the countryside. However, the car boot holding would not impact upon the vitality and viability of the town centre, but rather support the club by giving the uncertain period arisen from COVID-19 and provide a community engagement. In terms of protecting amenity, it is located at least 250 metres from the main car boot area, and no objection has been made by environmental health subject to parking and time restrictions. There's also an opportunity to review and reconsider the operational experience following the end of the 2-year period, which will be next year in September. So yeah, in terms of the distance, as you can see, the nearest property is located at least 250 metres to the north of the car boot sale. In terms of highway safety and parking provisions, there are at least 350 car parking spaces on site, which is able to accommodate the activities of car boot sale. And During the activity, it will be marshalled at all times to avoid congestion onto Kilsby Lane, with restrictions to the number of pitches permitted. In terms of other matters such as character and appearance, ecological consideration, and air quality, there's been no, it was considered no adverse impact and considered acceptable. There is a restricted covenant between the council and the football club. However, this is separate to the planning matters considered today, and it will be between both parties to consider the tenancy agreement following this. So, key issues again: Hill Morton Vale Residents Association, an interested party, was consulted, and they've raised no objection to the application and have made a number of requests, as seen below. Ultimately, they will not be the proposed development will not impact on is considered it will not impact on the decision, and the conditions that have been recommended have been mitigated under the conditions. So, in terms of recommendation, the council will look to support the application, and there will be an informatives relating to litter prevention and inappropriate access along the public right-of-way of Kilsworth Road. Subsequent to the publication of the report, there is an amendment to condition 5 to ensure that the car boot sale will be marshalled at all times between 8:30 and 2:30. So therefore, yep, it complies, and the council would look to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Okay, and well done for your first presentation to committee. Not easy. Right. I have a hand in the air. I can't quite see who's got their hand in the air.
Chair, it's me, Richard Holt. Just for clarity, can Lisa just confirm who the applicant is? Because I know on the application form it's Rugby Borough Football Club, and I just wanted confirmation. Are they the applicant? Is it Rugby Town Junior Football Club?
Apologies. Yes, it is Rugby Borough Football Club on Kilsby Lane.
No, it's not Rugby Borough Football Club. It's Rugby Town Football Club. So is it Rugby Town? Is it Rugby Town, or is it Rugby? Is it Rugby Borough Council who's putting in this application, or Rugby Town Football Club?
It's Rugby Borough. So there's a discrepancy on the report.
Okay, I'm still not totally clear. Richard, can you clarify, please?
Yeah, I know the application form specifically says Rugby Borough Football Club. I am aware that they may be different football clubs. There may be an anomaly on that form, and just wanted confirmation: is it Rugby Town or is it Rugby Borough Football Club?
I wasn't aware there was a Rugby Borough Football Club. Councillor Cranham, you've got your hand up.
Chair, on page 18 of the agenda, it says Rugby Town Football Club.
Yeah, that's what I thought I'd read.
So presumably that is the applicant.
Richard, do you want to respond before I ask Councillor Roothouse?
No, that's fine. I know there was a point of clarification that was wanted by the applicant. They'd had some dialogue with Lisa, but it was just confirmation really that that was the case. And where Sarah's got a hand up as well. So she may have to add something.
Sarah, and then Councillor Roothouse.
Thank you, Chair. I think there might be some confusion, but there's a Rugby Borough Football Club, a Rugby Town Football Club, and a Rugby Town Junior Football Club. And the site at Kilsby Lane is leased to Rugby Town Junior Football Club, which I think is the applicant. But that site is also known as Rugby Borough Football Club, and then Rugby Town Football Club is a completely separate entity down Butlin Lane.
Right. Okay. So we have got some inaccuracies here. Councillor Roothouse.
I'm just totally confused now.
So am I. And
Sorry.
it's in my ward.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to seek out, yeah, the differences. I know there's all these different clubs, and it's Rugby Borough Council land, is it still?
Yes.
Which is leased. So yeah, I was just wondering clearly who is the applicant on this matter, because if there is any issues or whatever, who do we actually go to?
For clarification, the lease of the land from Rugby Borough Council is to Rugby Town Junior Football Club.
So the word junior needs to be inserted.
That seems to be an important part of it.
Right. So rather than having Rugby Borough Football Club, it is Rugby Town Junior Football Club.
That is who has the lease, yes.
And I'll just seek clarification, Chair, but I'm of the same view.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, if the leaseholder is that particular body, that's the person I would expect to go to if there's any issues with the car boot sale.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So I think we're clear on that. Councillor Picker.
Thank you, Chair. I've just double checked for my own clarification, and I think it is definitely Rugby Borough Football Club, and I think they might have changed their name, but don't quote me on that. And they certainly used to be Rugby Town Junior Football Club.
Yeah.
So I think that might be where the confusion has arisen.
Can I have some legal clarification on how we deal with this application, please? Because if we haven't got the right applicant, how can we decide it?
As far as I'm aware, the right application has been submitted, planning application wise, and it's just a question of a confusion in the agenda and the presentations. I think we just continue to determine it.
Okay.
Sorry to come back in, Chair, but I would like to know what the lease document says on legal position, because if it's still saying Rugby Town Junior Football Club, even though they might have changed their name, and the lease between the Borough Council and the football club is that to me is the legal position, and that's who I'd go to, not Rugby Borough Football Club.
I tend to agree, because the lease was originally with Rugby Town Junior Football Club, as we well know, as the local council.
Has that been changed?
So the lease was entered into with Rugby Town Junior Football Club. If they have changed their name but are the same corporate body, then the lease transfers to whatever the new name is automatically. So that if they've changed their name formally, that doesn't matter. The lease still stands.
Okay. And it does mean that the address on the on page 25 is incorrect, because it says Rugby Town Football Club, and has been pointed out Rugby Town Football Club resides in Butlin Road, not Kilsby Lane.
Chair, can I just sort of come back, if that's okay?
Yeah.
I have an email in front of me from the applicant, Brian Quinnigan. It confirms that the application was from Rugby Borough Football Club, not Rugby Town Football Club or Rugby Town Junior Football Club. Rugby Borough Football Club is what he's mentioned on the application form, and on the application form notice was served on us as owners, as Rugby Borough Council, and also on Rugby Town Sports Trust. So from a planning application point of view, that's what's been served, and that's what's been we've taken that information from what's been submitted. So from what I understand, that is what that is the applicant, and that is what we should determine it on, and the applicant has confirmed that in an email to us.
Right, thank you, Richard, for clarification on that. So, councillors, can you please amend everything so that it reads Rugby Borough Football Club? And we'll now proceed into the debate on it. Councillor Cranham.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I shall support the application and I'll move approval. I think it's worth giving them a try. It's for temporary consent, and if it doesn't work, then it can be reviewed, can't it? So I'll move approval.
Thank you very much. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with Councillor Cranham. It's a temporary consent just for the 2 years. Personally, I think this is what all clubs are going to have to be doing to try to generate a bit of extra revenue, and good on them for having a bash, I think. So, yes, I'll definitely second that for approval.
OK, thank you very much. OK. Are there any other speakers? Richard, you have your hand up.
Sorry, Chair, it's an old hand.
And Steph, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to provide clarification to members that the name change occurred in 2019.
Okay.
So Rugby Borough Football Club is correct.
Right. I think we're all a bit confused, but I think hopefully that's clarified it. Right, so it's been moved for approval by Councillor Cranham, seconded by Councillor Garcia. All those in favour, please show.
Can I verbally vote for it as well, please?
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you,
Mrs.
Councillor.
Brown.
That's unanimous, Chair.
How many is that then, Veronica, please?
11.
Thank you. So Councillor Eccleston hasn't managed to make the meeting. And it could be technical issues. Okay, hands down, everybody. Right, we move on to then the third application, which is R20/0733, 23 Lutterworth Road, Pailton, and Paul Varnish is the officer to present this application. Over to you.
Good evening, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay. This application is for the demolition of an existing dwelling, the formation of a new site access and the erection of 4 dwellings and associated parking at 23 Lutterworth Road. The application has been called to committee by Councillor Gillias and the Parish Council due to their concerns regarding the development's impact on the existing area, the rural settlement, the creation of more traffic and the dwellings not being appropriate for first-time buyers or the elderly. The application site is a large plot located within the village boundary of Pailton. The general pattern of development is a linear format. The site is located adjacent to the greenbelt. A small section to the rear of the plot will be retained. An informative number 7 has been included within the decision which clarifies the use of the land has been for residential use. Any development on this land would more than likely be subject to an application. Representation has been received by Councillor Gillias and the parish and from neighbours to include concerns with design and appearance, highway safety issues and parking issues. There's been an amended scheme and there are concerns with the land to the rear and highway and parking issues again. If you can look to the plan to the left of the screen, R19/1076, consideration must be given to the approved application for outline permission for 4 dwellings under reference under R19/1076, where the principle of development was found to be acceptable. If they had applied for the reserved matters, they would have only had to consider layout, scale, appearance and landscaping. And then if you can look to the plan to the right of the screen, the initial scheme of 8 dwellings, the initial scheme was considered to be unacceptable due to the layout not conforming with the pattern of development. It's considered backland development and there was a bank of car parking to the front. This is the proposed scheme, the amended scheme. As you can see with the site layout, there's landscaping to the front. There's reduced car parking to the front, so there's no longer the bank of car parking. There's garages to the rear and parking to the rear, which is mentioned in the Pailton design guide. To the right, the properties are a good design with features to include the porch and gable features and a mixture of render and brick. This is the proposed plans, just to have a quick look at. There's 3 stories, so that's the ground, the first and the attic, and then you can see what the garages will look like, which will be to the rear. The key issues. The concerns raised in regards to the initial scheme have been addressed. So there's a lower density, a similar linear format to the existing neighbouring properties and properties of good design and appearance. There's also, the scheme provides landscaping, fewer parking spaces, a good size amenity space garden, and there's parking and garages to the rear. Each property will incorporate 3 car parking spaces to include the garage, and this will be secured under conditions and retained under conditions 7 and 8. Highways have been consulted and raised no objection to the proposal in terms of highway safety. The development is for 4 bedroom properties. Policy H1 would normally require housing mix, However, for a smaller development like this, it would be unreasonable to request for a mix of properties. Additionally, it does not reach the threshold for affordable housing. It is considered as the properties follow linear format, there will not be a detrimental impact on the amenity of any neighbouring properties. So the principle is acceptable and the development is considered to be sustainable. There are no issues with landscaping, highways, parking facilities, ecology, which will be subject to section 106, traffic generation, archaeology or environmental health. In terms of the planning balance, it is considered the principle is acceptable, it's a sustainable development, it respects the scale and character of the surrounding area, it's acceptable design and appearance, there's no adverse impacts on the amenity of neighbouring properties, air quality, archaeology, ecology and highway safety, and it complies with the local plan and the NPPF. So the recommendation would be approval subject to conditions, informatives and a section 106.
Thank you very much, Paul. Nice clear presentation and good graphics and good photographs as well. Okay, so who's got the first hand up there? Councillor Gillies.
Thanks very much, Chair. It should have been somebody from the Pailton Parish Council who be speaking on this tonight, but obviously there's been a slight cock up somewhere, to put it mildly. But I'll give my point of view if that's okay. First of all, I've got to thank Paul Varnish very much for answering some of my questions over the last few months and trying to address some of the parish council's concerns. But we are now at a point where the development, for me, I don't have a problem with the development in principle, but I do have a few issues with the design proposals. The dwellings themselves are okay, but the layout isn't quite acceptable in my terms and policy terms. And I think it is conflicting with policy SDC1. Because if we look very closely at this, we've got this sort of isolated bit of ground at the back, which isn't part of the development site, which is going to have access to by the landowner. So that's going to create a bit of a problem. I know that's a legal issue, not a planning issue. But also we've got cars parked out the front. Now, if we could have a bit of a close-up of the plan, I'll try and explain a little bit of where I'm coming from. Because while we're at this planning stage where the design is just on a piece of paper, there are little tweaks that could be made to make it much better. And that will then fit in with our own design policy and then local plan, which it's bullet point 4, in fact. It says proposals for new development will ensure that the living conditions of existing and future occupiers will be safeguarded. So we've got to try and get some sort of a design that will safeguard this sort of development for future generations, not the present one. But so if you look very carefully, I mean, it's very, very small, but you've got 2 parking areas right in the front of the dwellings, which is, it goes against the thrust of the parish's village design statement. You've got 2 close together, which are parked right outside of one of the houses. So what the car belonging to plot 3 was actually parked out the front of plot 4. And you see you've got this isolated garage at the back of each pair of dwellings. This are isolated from each property. Now, all you've got to do to try and create a little bit more sustainability is place that double garage in the rear of both of those gardens. And then by doing that, we'll then create a space to the left-hand side of one garage and the right-hand side of the other garage to get your additional parking in and alleviate. There's no need for any parking except for guests at the front. It's quite a simple task of just tweaking that round, and that will also give you space to the rear to get rid of all the unsightly wheelie bins which are given allocation at the front of the dwellings, right near the highway. You know, it can be sorted quite easily, and everything can go ahead and move forward. And I hope that the other councillors on the planning committee can see the common sense of doing something as simple as that to make it all function much better. And I hope they support me. And maybe, you know, whoever's listening from the developer could tweak that. And then, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that'd be absolutely spot on.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Paul and Richard Holt, would you like to take councillors' comments on board, please, and respond as to what we may and may not be able to do? Richard, is that you with your hand up?
It is, yes, Chair. I mean, obviously, yes, it'd be down to members to make an assessment about whether the proposals in front of them tonight are acceptable or not. Obviously, we obviously hear what Councillor Gillies is saying. Other councillors may agree, other councillors may not agree. But obviously, what we're looking at is obviously the application before us, and that's what's been submitted. The issue with design and layout can often be subjective. From what I understand, the Highway Authority is happy with the arrangement, and we as officers feel that based on the negotiations, I think that the case officers had, we have a scheme that we consider is acceptable in planning terms. However, obviously, you know, councillors themselves, you know, during this debate may wish to seek alterations, but obviously, ultimately, this is the scheme which is before members tonight.
OK, but there would be, should committee be minded to approve this, there is nothing to stop the applicant and the developers taking on board Councillor Gillies's comments and tweaking this before as it's built out.
Well, obviously we may need a fresh application or a revised if it's not carried out in accordance with the approved plans. But I'll bring Paul in because I noticed he's got his hand up and he may be able to add to it to more because he knows the site more than myself.
It's Paul, then Councillor Cranham, then Councillor Srivastava.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wanted to just kind of point out, if we go back to the initial scheme, there's been like a lot of work between myself and the agent to try and come up with a scheme that's acceptable. In terms of the scheme we're looking at to the left-hand side, the initial, sorry, if we look at the car parking spaces, they're obviously to the side of each, to the left and to the right hand side of the plot, to the front, and also the bin stores, which I appreciate. You know, it was deliberately put in the landscape strip to try and to try and shield these a bit, to keep them off the front of the site, to make them so when you drive by they're less visible. The initial scheme obviously had the bank of cars across the front. So like I say, I spoke to the agent to try and to alleviate some of these problems. In terms of where the garages are, it's again, I can appreciate what Councillor Gillies is saying. One of the reasons why the garages are the way they are and not in the gardens was because I wanted to, rather than have a 10-metre garden, I wanted larger gardens, and then the garages to the rear of it, to which I think, again, with what Richard said, it's a subjective opinion. It's like I say, the reason, I suppose it's a trade-off. I wanted the larger gardens, so that's why the parking is configured how it is. And like I say, I felt we've moved most of it to the rear, and the four that are there should be screened by the landscape into the front. So, again, in my subjective opinion, I think this has been assessed, and the scheme accounts for it. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Paul. Obviously, you have had the negotiations about the design scheme. Councillor Cranham, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Well, after I think it's 15 or 16 years sitting on the planning committee with Councillor Gillies, I've learned to respect his opinion. However, one of the prime principles of planning is we consider what is before us. Now, I'm sure the applicant is watching this and has taken note of Councillor Gillies's comments. However, what is before us is this, and I think it's quite good, considerably better than what was originally proposed. I'm going to move approval, I think.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cranham. Councillor Srivastava?
I think I look here, listening to the comment by Councillor Gracia, Councillor, it looks like his suggestions are quite productive. The development he's saying about might go with the area. He knows the area. He goes better with the area. It might be appropriate to wait for the applicant to reconsider the application and talk to developments.
Okay. As has been pointed out, we have to consider the application before us tonight, which we either approve or we refuse. Councillor Sanderson. You're muted, Councillor. That's it. You're with us.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm apt to agree with yourself and Councillor Cranham. We can only determine what is in front of us. If other members are not happy about the form, massing, layout or design, then they can vote against. But as far as I can see, the officer has really gone an awful long way to come up with a viable scheme, much better than the one that was originally proposed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Butlin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit like David Cranham, Councillor Cranham. We have to just consider what was in front of us. When I saw the first proposal, which looked like it was trying to get a quart into a pint pot, this is a far better kind of a presentation towards us and far more acceptable. As is the actual dwellings themselves are perfectly fine. They're in the right place. As per usual with everything in life today, the motor car basically predetermines our views and way in which we live our lives and where do we park them, etc., and move them about. I think this is a compromise, and I can see where the officer was coming from, because we also need that amenity space that goes round our houses, and we do not want to compromise it with the motor car. So is it acceptable? Will it work? On both counts, I think it will. As much as I kind of respect Councillor Gillius's points of view, the one thing we are not here, and we're not architects and we're not asked to redesign, we're here to basically consider what's before us. Is it acceptable? Is it kind of better than the previous application? And in all cases, I'd have to say yes. So I will be moving for approval.
Are you seconding then?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Paul, you have your hand up. Do you want to come in before I go back to Councillor Gillius and Councillor Picker?
Apologies, Chair, I left it up from last time.
Right, okay. Councillor Gillius.
Yeah, may I just re-emphasise, Chair, that I thank Paul very much for all the work he's put in, and I'm not going to be voting against this, strangely enough, but I'm actually appealing to the applicant to see whether or not, after this approval, he could seek building controls approval to just tweak this a little bit, so that he can, because what we're ending up with is an isolated double garage that's not on anybody's property. Do you understand what I'm saying? And if you sweep them round so the garages are on each individual's property, they feel as though they own something then, because at the moment you're walking across somebody else's ground to get to your car, to your garage. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Yeah. It's just a simple task of doing that. But there was one point I wanted to make, and that is regarding the archaeology. And just as a bit of a background there, as my sort of experience within that village, I've probably worked on 10 brand new houses in the village and probably about 20 refurbishments in the village. So I know the village like the back of my hand. But there is a piece in the archaeology report about the smithy, and there is still just a section of small section of wall still remaining from that smithy, and I've got to declare a bit of an interest in that, because the last smithy that worked there was my grandfather, and him and his brother also had a blacksmith shop at Monk's Kirby, but unfortunately his brother Percy was killed in the Great War and is mentioned on the Monk's Kirby War Memorial. But it would be nice if that little bit of wall was left there to to, reflect on times gone by. But anyway, that's enough for me.
Thank you very much for the history lesson, Councillor Gillies. Councillor Picker.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to agree with the comments made by Councillor Cranham and Councillor Butlin, but I think Councillor Gillies has made his points in an excellent way, and hopefully the developers will be listening.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've had it thoroughly debated. We've had it moved for approval by Councillor Cranham, seconded by Councillor Butlin. All those in favour, please show.
Hi, I approve verbally.
Thank you. Veronica?
That's 11-4, that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Right, you can lower your hands. Right, I've had a message from Councillor Eccleston. He's been trying to join and has been having connection problems. If he is now with us, he will be able to participate in the last two applications.
I'm here, Chair.
Right, okay, so you can now join in on these two applications. So application 4 is R20/0914. It's the disused railway line between Leamington Spa and Long Itchington, and Erica Buchanan is the officer to present. Over to you, Erica.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, good evening, councillors. Right, it's up. Can you see the screen?
Not yet, Erica. It's coming now, I think. Yes, got it.
Okay. The application is for the disused railway line between Leamington Spa and Long Itchington. And it's for the change of use of the disused what was formerly the liaise line from a historic disused railway line to a cycle pedestrian route to be laid in a sealed surface with associated ancillary development. The application is across 3 authorities, and the satellite view here is of the whole of the route for the 3 authorities. This plan shows the actual element that is actually of part of the scheme that is in actually Rugby section, the Rugby section. These site photos are showing the hard surfaced area that comes from Draycote Water to the unmade area that forms of what the proposed area is to be resurfaced. This is Route 41, and at the moment it comes down through here. It goes down onto the main road into Long Itchington and then comes back up again. With the proposal, it is proposed to come along here and go straight along to what was the Marston Junction and on from there. There are several public footpaths across the route, and these are from the definitive map. Bondon Farm, there's a boardwalk. There's a couple of boardwalks areas, which is like this, one in Stratford and one in ours, and that's what the image looks like. Key issues: principle of development, impact on ecology, neighbouring property. The principle is the change of use of former railway line to pedestrian route. It provides a sustainable use. It's part of Sustrans Access for All. The route covers Stratford, Warwick and Rugby. It's a safer route than the existing fragmented route and provides a 3 metre wide sealed surfaces and complies with policy GP1 and GP2. In terms of biodiversity, the site is identified as a local wildlife site, and there are protected species on site, and the proposal will result in removal of trees and shrubs. This will have a localised impact but would not be materially harmed, and it would have a minimal impact on the wider character and visual appearance. WCC Ecology have been looking at the site as a whole rather than individual applications, and there is, whilst there are some trees to be removed as set out in the report, there will still be a net gain from it with the ecology and biodiversity that will be put back into the scheme. In terms of issues of impact on the neighbouring properties, The proposal will result in the increase of use of the route, and that pedestrians and cycle use results in minimal impact of noise. Concerns have been raised from local residents of motorbikes on the route, and to mitigate this, it is therefore proposed to include the following informative. The applicant is advised that to restrict the use of the route by motorcycles, suitable barriers should be included in the accesses to and from the route. In terms of highway, several public rights of way do cross the route, and the proposal would include improved access for all users. The 3 metre wide footpath is wide enough to cater for two-way travel, and the proposal would include the upgrade of R213 from a footpath to a bridleway to allow for the use of cyclists and equestrian use. There is no additional parking proposed, but the users would be encouraged to use the car park facilities at Draycote Water. The proposal provides improved route for cycle, pedestrians and equestrian. It provides a good quality, comprehensive greenway and leisure use. And the recommendation is to approve, subject to conditions set out in the report and the additional informative relating to the use of barriers along the Rugby stretch.
Thank you, Erica. Excellent presentation as usual. And I have to say that this is a good example of the collaborative working between three authorities, and the scheme is really well thought out. The conditions and the informatives, I think, cover all of the queries that we have, and we are using the same conditions and informatives in all three authorities. So I have absolutely no hesitation in recommending this for approval. It's a much needed piece of our leisure and countryside, and I think it's a brilliant scheme. Right, so we've got lots of hands going up, and the next one is Councillor Picker.
Thank you very much, Chair, although you have somewhat stolen my thunder. I must confess this is an application in which I have a bit of interest, because I think, like a large number of residents, I have gotten back into cycling over the past months. So an additional improved cycle route in the local area is something that's absolutely fantastic, both from a public health perspective and from an environmental and sustainability perspective. I think the informatives and conditions on this are appropriate, and given it spans multiple local authorities, I think it would be a dereliction of duty not to approve this, so I will second approval.
Thank you, Councillor Picker. Councillor Garcia.
Well, you've both stolen my thunder. It's a long time since I've been excited about anything really coming to planning, and I think this is absolutely fantastic. It's absolutely what we need, and you know, people are now seeing the benefits of walking and cycling, and fantastic to have somewhere safe without the traffic. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So I'll definitely be voting for it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Very much welcome the introduction of more cycle routes through the borough. I'm very pleased to see the informative regarding motorised use of the track. As I only live 20 yards from the Great Central Way, I know that it can be absolutely a nightmare for local residents if one's got motorcycles whizzing up and down it every few hours. What we've had to do on the Great Central, for example, is to put up notices that actually says only authorised vehicles are allowed on it, and that there should be no unauthorised motor vehicles of any description on a cycle route. So I think that perhaps the informative needs a little bit of toughening up in terms of working with environmental services and the open spaces team in terms of control of unauthorised motor vehicles on this cycle route.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Butlin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a real kind of plus for us in the area. There is an awful lot of money being spent by all authorities in Warwickshire to get a very comprehensive cycle routes everywhere, and this will form part of that plan. So I have no hesitation of giving my support for this. I think it's a great thing, and also because the railway line is connected not far from my back door, I will be using it as well. So thank you very much. Although it won't be for cycling, it will be walking.
Yeah. And I think we call it the Lias line, don't we? As in the Lias Clay. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Gillius.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, it is incredible, isn't it? And like Councillor Garcia, I was most excited to hear this, because when you get out and about on some of these new paths, footways, you get a whole new different perspective of a place that you've known for decades, and yet you just don't see it from certain angles. But I've got to tell you also, there's good news for Councillor Sanderson, because I'm just about to recommission one of my spare bicycles, so he can have that. I'll give it to him, and he can cycle down that to his heart's content.
Right. And we'll all come and take photographs. Right, are there any more speakers? No? Okay.
I think that's that attractive an option, Chair.
So I've moved for approval, seconded by Councillor Picker. All those in favour, please show. And Mrs Brown, Councillor Mrs Brown, are you in favour?
Yes, I'm in favour, thank you.
Thank you.
That's unanimous, Chair.
So that's 12 if it's all of us. Thank you. Right, hands down, everybody. And agenda item, application 4 is R20/0965, and Nigel Reeves to present. This is Sedgefield Barn, Priory Road, Woolston. Have we got Nigel?
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Okay.
Richard, I'm sorry, would you mind sharing the presentation? It's not open this time.
I can do, no problem.
Apologies for that.
Yeah, 1 or 2 glitches tonight.
Yeah, the computer's just whirring away. Okay, can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Nigel?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The planning application relates to Sedgefield Barn, which is part of the Priory Barns complex, which is located on Priory Road, Woolston, just to the north of the, immediately to the north of the village of Woolston. It's a full planning application, and it's for a single-storey extension to the southeast elevation of the northern barn and alterations to the fenestration on the northwest elevation. Next slide, please. And that shows the block plan, and it is in the northern area just there. Thank you. Next slide, please. The proposals, as I said, is full planning permission for a single-storey extension to the barn. The site was former agricultural barns that have been subject to a number of prior approvals under Class M, B and Q of the General Permitted Development Order, and as well as subsequent planning applications that have been granted on it.
Oh, we've just lost it.
Yeah, I'll wait. The development is now close to completion, and I said immediately it's close to Woolston Village. There are important heritage assets nearby. There's the Priory, which is Grade 2 style, which is located immediately to the northwest of Sedgefield Barn, and Woolston Priory, which is in the field to the east. The Priory, site of the Priory itself is much further over to the west, but the whole of the field is allocated as a scheduled ancient monument. The council. The application was called into the planning committee by Councillor Paul on the grounds that the proposal does not comply with local and national policy. Next slide, please. That shows the site from Priory Road. on the to the right hand side, that's the grade 2 star Woolston the Priory, and to the left is the main Barns complex at Priory Barns. Next slide, please. That shows another view from the south. That's Barn 3 that's now completed, and the gable wall of Barn 2 is in front of you. Next slide, please. That is the side elevation of Barn 2 facing the western field, which is the Sheldrake Ancient Monument. Next slide, please. And that's the northern elevation of Sedgefield Barn, which is now subject of the current planning application. Next slide, please. So the determining considerations are principle of development, impact on the design and character of the locality, including heritage assets, impact on residential amenity and other matters. Next slide, please. They're the policies that support the development. And as I said previously, there's a long history of prior approvals and subsequent planning permissions that have been granted on the Priory Barn complex since 2015 to convert the barns into residential. And these are an important fallback position as set out in the report. Next slide, please. Yeah, the principles also in a sustainable location close to the village centre and other services. That's an internal view of the site, and yeah, where the cursor is, that is the internal elevation of Sedgefield Barn, and the works that have been carried out on it are per the previous planning application, and they're just waiting for the this current approval to see whether they can have permission for the extensions or not. To the left are two. Could you just go back a second, please, Richard, to the last slide? Yeah, to the left, there are two barns there. They're the two extensions that have been granted internally on Barn 2. Next slide, please. That shows the rear elevation, and that's the location of where the single-storey timber boarded extension will go. Next slide, please. And that shows the internal roofs that have been retained within the barn. Next slide, please. And that shows the location of the extension. Next slide, please. That's the internal, that's the elevation of how the projection will look. Next slide, please. And that's the rear elevation. There has been one change from the approved plans, and the developer has now fitted all the main openings with half timbered doors. The very one on the very right hand side, that was previously glazed patio door, but we've managed to get further improvements during the course of the negotiations in this planning application. Next slide, please. That shows the relationship of Sedgefield Barn to the front elevation, or one of the main. There's two main elevations to the Priory. It's and that shows the relationship of the Sedgefield Barn to the Priory. In between, there is also another slightly taller brick-built barn that's outside of the application site, and that screens this barn mainly from the Priory. Thank you. Next slide, please. And that shows the elevation and the relationship of Barn 2 to the Sheldrake Ancient Monument. Next slide, please. Yeah, again, as we talked about, showing the photograph showed that the development will be screened from existing buildings, and the single-storey extension will not impact on the adjacent residential property of the Priory. And the relationship with other properties in the Priory Barns complex, which are not yet occupied, are considered to be acceptable. Next slide, please. The conclusion. The proposal is considered to be beneficial to the character of the locality and retains an important historic grouping of farm buildings, which is important to the setting of the nearby heritage asset. There has been one objection from Woolston Parish Council, and this is covered in detail in the report, and I understand that Stephanie Gibbrat is also going to be speaking on this point before we go into major talking, but the recommendation is to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nigel. I think the photographs actually were really clear and helped to illustrate how the barns fitted into the village and into the street scene and the relationship to the Priory as well. So I'm going to invite our Head of Growth and Investment to address committee before we start debating on this one, because you will have realised from your report that there was quite a lot of information and concerns coming in from Woolston Parish Council. Steph, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. As you've mentioned and Nigel has mentioned, Woolston Parish Council has submitted a live complaint which has been sent to me directly in relation to Priory Barns. The main concerns relate to the site as a whole, and the Parish Council believes that it does not have the appropriate permissions for the works historically undertaken, particularly in relation to Barns 2 and Barn 3. Their letter focuses on the extent of the historic demolition and construction work undertaken under the prior approvals at the site. And this was as a result of the structural condition of the original buildings. And also concerns have been expressed regarding the historic compliance with policy on a number of matters, such as the Grade 2 star listed building and scheduled monument, the green belt materials used, the amount of parking, lack of a flood risk assessment, foul drainage and the use of spoil. The Parish Council in their letter have emphasised that they support the principles of the conversion of redundant agricultural barns to bring the buildings back into use as dwellings. However, they would like reassurance from the Borough Council this was carried out in the proper manner. I just wanted to advise committee I've reviewed the case file and responded with my view directly to the Parish Council. And they're currently considering my response. I'd be very happy to discuss this with them further if this would be helpful. I just wanted to advise committee that I view the concerns as a separate matter to the consideration of the application before you. And this application relates to Barn 1 rather than Barns 2 and 3. Therefore, at officer level, we're content that it continues to be determined this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification. All right, we'll open it up to committee for debate. Councillor Cranham.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the conclusion sums it up. This is very sympathetic to the heritage assets. It looks to be well built. It fits in with the local landscape, and I have no hesitation in moving approval.
Thank you very much. Councillor Butlin.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Cranham. This fits in rather well. It looks a really high quality development. The principle of the extension to the existing barn looks, it fits into the kind of landscape and the also the kind of existing structures. So I'm more than happy to kind of give a second for approval. But I would also like to say some of the other issues that came up here are more to do with compliance and enforcement, and hopefully then if there is any concerns over that, that will be kind of answered for in that manner.
Thank you. Councillor Garcia.
I have to agree with Councillor Cranham and Councillor Butlin. It looks a really lovely development and very, really adds to the village, I would have said. And, I will definitely be voting for it. I think it's really an asset. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gillies.
Yes, Chair, I can understand a lot about the comments that have been received, and certainly in my experience of working on dozens of barn conversions, and some of those barn conversions have been done by people who know the job inside out and know just how to conserve materials and reuse materials so they are original. There are developers now that take the easy route. But this is no good, that'll have to come out, this has got to go, and you end up with your heritage asset in a skip or in a landfill site. So there's got to be a lot of care involved in doing work on these sort of developments, so that you end up with something that is sympathetic to the original building. For me, I've only got to look at the mortar joints on some of these rebuild jobs to say, well, that's just an imitation of what was there before, and the type of mortar that they use. It's so simple when you've been in the job for a long time to distinguish between something that's been renovated and something that's been totally rebuilt. So, I mean, I support this application, but the thing is, we've got to keep a handle on the heritage asset and the way they are restored.
Thank you. And I think we saw the photograph there of how they were retaining the original roof beams, weren't they? Which is all to the good. Right, if there are no more hands up, then this has been proposed by Councillor Cranham, seconded by Councillor Butlin. All those in favour, please show. And Councillor Mrs Brown?
Thank you. Yes, I'll vote verbally in favour, please.
Thank you.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, hands down, everybody. Right, we now move on to agenda item 5, which is advance notice of site visits for planning application. Richard?
No, we haven't had any more, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kieran Brown, you have your hand raised. Is that an
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. Old hand. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Agenda item 6, planning appeals update.
Thank you, Chair. The only comment I was going to add was that in terms of the development at Top Road, Barnacle, it was due to be heard by the Planning Inspectorate in June, but they've now moved it back and are looking at a date to mid to late August at the moment, although I understand that hasn't been confirmed yet. This is partly to do with them managing their own workload, but also in the current situation and the roadmap of the government and whether it will be virtual or not.
Okay, thank you. I have some hands raised. Councillor Garcia. Need to unmute, Councillor.
Sorry, it is a question about Gypsy and Traveller sites. Would that be appropriate for me to ask it now as we are discussing that, or do you want me to ask at a different time?
I think ask at a different time on that one. I think go direct to the relevant officer on that one, please. Go to Richard. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. The application, the appeal regarding 1 Caldecott Street was dismissed in January. Have there been any enforcement action on that site since?
Richard, do we have an answer to that yet?
I'm aware the site is being monitored. There is a further meeting of officers. I think it's possibly next week to discuss the latest action. But obviously, as you're aware, this has been quite a sensitive site and we can update members at the appropriate time. But we are in discussion about it.
Okay, Stephanie, do you want to come in on this point?
It was just to confirm the internal meetings on Monday, the 10th of May.
Okay, thank you. Right, and that moves us on to agenda item 7, delegated decisions, which are noted, everybody? To note, okay.
Noted.
Noted. Right. So that brings us almost to the end of tonight's meeting, as there is no business involving exempt information. As this is our last meeting of the municipal year, I'd like to take this opportunity of thanking all of the planning officers and our legal department and democratic services who've worked with the committee throughout the year. We've had some excellent presentations, excellent reports. They've been very concise, very clear, and certainly have helped the committee in their deliberations and coming to decisions. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank every member of the planning committee for their diligence in reading the reports, for their contributions during the meeting, and for the decisions that they have made, some of which have not been easy ones. Some of us will be carrying on with planning in the next municipal year, but for those who are not, we say thank you very much. And I'd like to say an especial thank you for all of their hard work and diligence on planning committee over the years, because Councillor Cranham and Councillor Butlin will not be on planning next year and are retired.